Many weeks ago, we began the book of Revelation. Tonight, we're down now at the very last portion of that particular book. I think that everybody can see that in order to study the book of Revelation, you have to study it as a whole, because it goes from one end to the other, and unless we see it in that way, we miss a great deal of it. In the first 3 chapters, we are introduced to the churches of Jesus Christ. We're introduced not only to them, but we're also introduced to God, and we're introduced to the Holy Spirit, and we're introduced to Jesus Christ. And then in chapter 4 is where the message really begins. And there's where the message began about the big battle between Satan and Christ, or between the army of Christ, that is his kingdom, and the army of Satan, which at that time was the Roman government. And so the whole battle then plays out. And then during that battle, we saw that Rome would try everything under the sun to destroy the church of our Lord. But then the interesting thing is that all that God told us to do was, "Be thou faithful, and I will give unto you a crown of life." All the way through, it was just letting us understand that He's going to fight the battle, and what we need to do is to be faithful to Him, and then we will receive that reward. Well, last week we came to the end of chapter 20. And in chapter 20, there is where we came to the end of that big battle. We saw that all the enemies of God had been destroyed. The last enemy was Satan himself. And then we saw the judgment day and how everything was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, burned up, and there was nothing left. Now then, tonight, in chapter 21 and chapter 22, we pick up the faithful people. What happened to those faithful people? What happened to the people that God said, "Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give unto thee a crown of life"? So, last week, we looked ahead. We saw the destruction of the universe. We saw the destruction of Satan and everything on here. But now, what about all the faithful people? Where are they going to be after the judgment day? That is what chapters 21 and 22 are about. So no more Satan, no more evil, no more battle. It's just what will happen to the saints after that judgment day. Now, as you look at that city that's setting up there in the air, I want to call your attention again to this fact. That is, all the way through, John has been seeing visions. He would say, "The Spirit caught me away, and I saw." And then he would describe these visions that he saw there. And it was like describing to us a play that he had seen. The last thing that we're coming to is now that he's going to look up, and he's going to see this great city. And that's what the lesson tonight is really going to be about. So as we start out now in Revelation chapter 1 and in verse 1, here it says, it tells us that the first heaven, the first earth had fled away, and he sat on a big white throne and so forth. And then it's going to tell us that the heavens and the earth fled away. So as you look at all of this, you can see that there it is, and then all of a sudden the earth is going to go away, all the heavens are going to flee away, everything is going to be dissolved as we get into this realm. And the only thing now that's going to be left then is the Christ, the new heavens, and the new earth. And so I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth are passed away, and the sea is no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. So here now we see this new heaven and this new earth, and it's coming down out of heaven here to show us this. It's something different. It's not the same earth that we see. It's a new heaven and it's a new earth because the earth has been passed away and there's no longer any sea. Now, if you remember what the sea represented all the way through, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, was all of those dysfunctional, ungodly societies of man that would fight against God. That is no longer in existence. All that has been thrown away. We can read here about the new heaven and the new earth. In Peter used it. We find it back in Isaiah's time that they used it. And it's talking about a new dwelling place. A new dwelling place that we really have here. So he said, I saw these things. So I saw the new heaven and the new earth. Now he saw them after Rome had fallen. He saw them after the empire had fallen. He saw them here after Satan had fallen. After the judgment of man, I want to call your attention. This is when he saw this new heaven and this new earth that's coming down. Now it's new. It's recently made is what that word means. It's fresh. It's unused. It's of a new kind. It's unprecedented. These are the definitions that our scholars give us of this new earth, this new heaven, and this new earth that we've got here. So I saw this new heaven and this new earth, for the first one was passed away. Now the interesting thing is that as you begin to look at the new heaven and the new earth, you go back and begin to research it, you find it back in Isaiah and in Ezekiel. And as you go back in Isaiah, he used this language to look toward the kingdom or the church. So let me talk about that for just a moment, and it'll help us understand what that new heaven and new earth, what that is. It's terminology. It's an idiom. It's a colloquialism. It's a way of saying things to mean certain things. Now, way back, let's go back during the days of Moses. As you get back here, you have the Jewish society living in the land of Israel. And Isaiah is prophesying about the new time that's coming when Jesus Christ comes and sets up his kingdom. Now he said, at that time, there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. Well, now when Christ came and died on the cross, this earth didn't go away and God made a new earth. It's the same earth. But Isaiah and Ezekiel said, it's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. In other words, it's going to be a new dwelling place, a new way that you people are going to live. You're no longer going to live in the land of Israel. You're no going to live under the law of Moses. It's going to be a new dwelling place that you have. Now, when John is getting ready to talk to us in this way, or God gets ready to talk with John, and he wants to tell us now, what will life be like at the end of time? Now, after the judgment day, and we all go out there and we're living, what will life be like? Now, stop to think, the only way that God can speak to you and me, or the only way we can speak to our children, or the only way that a teacher can teach anything, is to go from the known to the unknown. You have to take things that people know and understand, and then use it so they can see this. All right, what God is telling us is, now when you get out there, it's going to be a new dwelling place. It's different. It's of a different kind. It's going to be a new place for us to live when we get there. Peter used it to talk about the glorified church that's in there. Now the vision deals with the church at home with God in glory after the final judgment. That's what this is talking about. Is you take this church and it's going to be home with God. What's it going to be like? It's going to be a new dwelling place. It's going to be a different way of living. There'll no longer be any sea. That is, no more restless, turbulent, ungodly, seething societies that are there. But it's going to be different. Now he said, John said, when he said, he was taken up, and I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. So he was taken up on this mountain, and God then let him see something. Now remember, John was constantly, through the book of Revelation, he was carried away by the Spirit back in chapter 4. He was carried away by the Spirit, and he saw the heavens open. He was able to look into the heavens. Another time he was carried out into the wilderness, and he looked out there and he saw the great harlot that is out there. Now he's carried up into a mountain. And now then, as he's carried up into the mountain, in front of him, this vision, here comes this city, this New Jerusalem, this new city that's come down. Now, of course, this is a city that the old patriarchs were looking for, Abraham himself. in Revelation chapter 11 and verse 10. In Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 10. You remember that passage of where Abraham was called out of the Ur of the Chaldees, and he traveled all this time, and he was doing it by faith. And God says, now, had he wanted to return home, there was nothing keeping him from it. He could have gone back home. Well, why, after all these many years of him leaving home, traveling around, and yet not having a son, why didn't Abraham turn around and go back home? How long would it take you before you gave up? It says the reason he didn't is that he was looking for a city not made with hands. And so again, in the 13th chapter of Hebrews, in verse 14, there again the Hebrew writer said, we also are looking for that city not made with hands. So this is the city, this is the dwelling place, this is the reward that we have. This is what keeps us going. When you stop to think, why don't I quit? When times are tough. I keep trying to do what is right, but things sometimes just seem to get worse and worse. Times are tough. Just think, there's a new city out there, and this is described in this way. So I saw this holy city, and it came down out of heaven, and it was made ready as a bride adorned for her husband here. Now the old Jerusalem, see this is a new one, the old Jerusalem was very corrupt. Remember how corrupt it was, and God finally had to destroy Jerusalem itself, and then it never did regain its footing again. And so the old Jerusalem, which was the headquarters of God's people, was corrupt. Now this new Jerusalem, this is going to be a different place that is in here. As we've said, you've come to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. Now in Hebrews 12, verse 22, there is where the Hebrew writer is telling, that's what you've come to. As he's talking back there in Hebrews chapter 12, he's trying to tell us Christians how we ought to be faithful. Now he says, if you stop to think about Moses and the children of Israel, they came to Mount Sinai, and then he told about how awesome it was. All of us, I'm sure, have thought about that. And how that had we been there, what an impression it would have made. And it seems to me like I would never have been unfaithful again to my God. As you're there at that big mountain, and all of a sudden, God has that mountain to shake. There's a big earthquake. And out of the top of it belches all of this smoke that is coming out. And then all of a sudden, the words of God began to roar down that mountainside to give them these laws. What an awesome sight that would be. Fire. The mountain caught on fire. What an awesome sight. But then the Hebrew writer says this. He said, I want you to think of that as just a little old thing. He said, we're not come to a small thing like that. But we're come to this heavenly Jerusalem. We're coming to a new city that is up there. The Jerusalem, the mountain that we're coming to, is something greater than that back there. That's what Revelation 21 and 22 is about. We're seeing this new Jerusalem come down. It's the glorified church. What's it going to be like? After Satan's fall and the judgment day, then what will we be like there? Coming down show its divine origin. It's not built by man and so forth. And it's made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. Again, this is telling how beautiful the city is. He's trying to get us to see that. Now, as you look and you see the bride, this is her most beautiful time in her life, how she's all adorned out. And if you remember, the church is the bride of Christ. And we've talked about that. Right now, we are so speakingly engaged to Jesus Christ. We are promised to Him. The Bible word is betrothed. We're betrothed to Him, but we're not living with Him. All right, now, right now, we are His wife. We are betrothed. But after this, after the end, we're going to go live with Him. And so it shows how beautiful this city is that's in here. So the people of God, in all their brilliance and all their purity that we find about this bride that is in here. And then he says, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men. We'll stop right there. The word tabernacle, as we think about it, we usually think about it as just as a noun and a place. But the word tabernacle really means a dwelling place, a place where you dwell together. I tabernacle with my wife. You tabernacle with your wife and your children. What does it mean? It means we all live in the same place. Now, what's going to happen? Well, the tabernacle of God is with men. He's going now to live among us. After that judgment day, we will be participants or citizens in this city where he will live. And he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people. And God himself shall be among them. So think how wonderful that will be. As you're going about that great city that's out there, and you're living in that new dwelling place. As you're living in that new dwelling place, God will live there with you. He will be one of the citizens. Now, he will be the king. He'll still be the creator. He'll still be the one we worship. But he'll be living there. Men will now be living and dwelling with God. That's how great that it will be in there. The word there, tabernacle, has that word that scholars bring out, and it means a tent or a dwelling. That's what it is. The place where he dwells is going to be with men. He'll dwell for them. God desires us, and so forth. Now, in the Mosaic age, God said, I will make my dwelling among you, and my soul will not reject you. I will also walk among you and be your God, and you shall be my people. Now, back there, he told him, he said, now, you obey me, and I'll dwell among you. But there's a little something different. He told him, he said, however, you will not be able to see me. You're not going to be able to see me because man can't see me and live. But he promised them, I'll be there. I'll be there with you. Now, where was he going to be? He was going to be in that physical tabernacle. That physical tabernacle that they built. You remember where the fire was up in the daytime and at night, and smoke was up in the daytime. And at night, you look over and there's that tent, and it's all lit up, and it's bright and glowing from the inside. God said, that's where I'll be. That's where I'll meet you. It will not be that intermingling that you have at that time. And he tells us he dwells with us now. But as we talked about this morning, he dwells with us through faith. He's guiding us in all of these ways. Then we're going to be right there with him. So prophesied really in our age. The Christian age is fulfilled. He's telling us, I will dwell with them and I will guide them and so forth that's in there. Now in eternity, God wants that close relationship with his people forever. We were built for that relationship. He made us that way. As you go back and you begin to appreciate the creation of man, God made man different than all other things in creation. He breathed into him the breath of life. He made man after his own image. Now we're beginning to see why. The men, those of us human beings, were made in the image of God, and we will be living with God for billions and trillions of years because we're made really in his image. Now he tells us the blessings. And I will wipe away every tear from their eye, and there will no longer be any death. There will be no longer any mourning or crying or pain. And the first things are passed away. All these things we have now are going to be passed away. All the tears are past. All death is past. All mourning is past. All pain is past. All these things that cause heartache in this life, that will all be passed away in there. Now, that wasn't true back in the first century time when they were fighting back there in Asia Minor, but it's going to be true down here at the end of this time. Then he goes ahead that he says, "Then said he to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." Remember, this is how he started it now in chapter 1. As he was describing himself, I'm the Alpha and the Omega. That's the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. I am the A and the Z. I'm the first and the last. In other words, he's saying, I'm all there is. He said, "And I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost." And we're going to learn next week, it's coming right out of the throne of God. So here in this great city, for those of us that are thirsting after him, he's going to give us that water of life, and we'll be able to live with him forever and ever. Then in verse 7, he said, "He that overcometh shall inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son." So all of these things now we're going to get. We're now going to inherit everlasting life that he promised us back in Matthew 19. He told us we could have it. Now, at the end of time, after the judgment, that's where we're going to get it. We will inherit that salvation that he told us we could have. We will inherit the blessings that Peter talked about. We will then be inheriting the kingdom that he tells us in Matthew chapter 25, that we're to get into the kingdom that was prepared before the foundation of the world. So this is where we're going to have all this beautiful things. We'll be free from death and all of this. These are the things that we're going to inherit that's in here. And we will be his son and receive the inheritance of his son. Won't that be something? When the inheritance time comes, and when God now starts giving us our reward, he's going to give it to us as an inheritance. You were my son. You were born again. You were a child of God. You were faithful to me. Now then, when this earth is all gone away, we will receive our inheritance. Down here on this earth, we can look at the older generation, and as we're in a younger generation, and we can think, boy, it'll be great when I get my inheritance. Now, if you're not a child, if you're not a member of the family, you don't have any hope of inheritance. But if you're a child, you have that hope of, I'm going to inherit. Things are going to get better for me. I'm going to get what mom and dad are leaving behind. Now, of course, God is not going to leave it behind. He's not going to die. But we are going to inherit. And so it would be kind of like if I were to tell my kids, or let's say some rich guy were to tell their kids, now kids, I'm not going to wait until I die to let you have your inheritance. I'm going to give you your inheritance on a certain day. Would those kids be looking toward that certain day? I'll give you the inheritance on the 1st of January of this next year. What would all of the children of that father be thinking about this next week? I'm going to get my inheritance. That's what we're going to do. We're going to be able to inherit from our God then in this way. Then he tells us about the other people. What about all those other people that have gone away? For the cowardly and unbelieving. What does all this mean? The cowardly are those that are afraid to do what they should do. There's a time in this life when we know what we should do, but we're afraid to do it for some reason. We're afraid because we'll be embarrassed. We're afraid because it will cost us a lot of money. We're afraid even it might cost us our life, as many times happened there. And so, for those who are cowardly, you can forget it. The unbelieving, that's those who don't trust in God. The abominable, the people that worship the abominable idols and so forth, things that are abominable to God, the people that are objects of disgust, murderers, that's unlawful taking of life, fornicators, illicit sexual intercourse, sorcerers, those people that are devoted to magic with drugs. They use their drugs to cause people to think that they were performing magic. Idolaters, those are the ones that worship the false gods. Now, all these people, what's going to happen to them? Well, he said their part will be in the lake of fire that burneth with fire and brimstone, this is the second death. And all liars. How many kind of liars are there? We could look at it, and social liars, financial liars, political liars, on down the line, people who are lying. God says He's going to take His children, those that are faithful to Him. So then in verse 9, then one of the 7 angels, remember them, who had the 7 bowls of the 7 last plagues, came and spoke with me, saying, come here, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. So this angel takes John up now. He's going to take him up in this mountain and show him this bride. But what happens? He sees that city. Now, remember, all this is in a vision. If we go back again to chapter 4, back there we saw that he told Jesus to look up, told John to look up to see Jesus, the Lamb. There's the Lamb that's sacrificed with blood all over him. So Jesus looked up to see the Lamb, and he saw a lion. That Lion of Judah. We understand what that's talking about. We understand that it's trying to describe how great Jesus is. He's the sacrificial lamb, and yet He is the Lion of Judah, the King of Israel, and our King. Now here it is. Look at the bride. So as we look up and we look at the bride, we see the city. The bride and the city, really, talking about the same thing. Now this city is not human in any respect. It's from God. It's coming down from God, and John sees it. So he was up on that high mountain when he saw it. Now again, this is something that's not new to us as we study the Old Testament. Ezekiel was taken up on a mountain. He was given an opportunity to see a structure there like a city. And so God is still talking to John in language of the Old Testament that he would understand. So as you look at the New Jerusalem, here it is, it's got something having the glory of God, crystal clear. And it was a sparkling city, a great city that was in there. Now, great high walls. Now, high walls mean security. That's really what it's talking about there, is a great security. Steve brought out this morning, when you go over and you look at the country in which those people live, walls were their major thing in the city. That was the major thing. The first thing that you did when you build a city, if all of us went out, we found a knoll where we're going to live, first thing we do is build walls. Because if you don't build a wall, the enemy is going to come in and get you. Your only protection is that wall. So you always build the wall first. All right, now what about this? It has a great high wall. It is secure. It is secure. Don't worry about it failing in any way. There are 12 gates. The gates are where you can go in, the access. There's going to be gates on every side of this thing. Going to be 3 gates on every side so that we have access to get in. And the wall of the city had 12 foundation stones, and on them were the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Now when you say, what does this mean? Well, I'm not going to get carried away trying to make a big deal and say, okay, now here's what it means, because this is a vision, and so you look at the foundation that's out here, and you see these stones, and they have the name of the 12 apostles. Now, in what sense were the apostles could be considered foundations? Well, Ephesians 2 and verse 19, there we have the statement of where it's talking about the church, is God's household, having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets. That means on their preaching. What is the church built on today? What is every doctrine built on? What's the church built on? It's the teaching of those apostles. Now then, who is it that we're talking about up there? We're talking about the glorified church. We're talking about the church after everything has been destroyed. What's the foundation? Why are we going to be there? We're going to be there because we followed the teaching of the apostles while we were down here. And he that spake with me had a measure of gold, a golden reed to measure the city and the gates thereof and the wall thereof. Now, it's a golden measuring reed or a rod, or in our vocabulary, a yardstick, a tape measure, a long stick designed and measured off so you could measure things and see how it was. Now you can compare this with chapter 11. See, this is not anything new. Back in chapter 11, there we measured Old Jerusalem, or we measured the church of God, talking about the Jerusalem here on this earth. We measured that. Now then here, we're going to measure this. It has a definite measurement. This city is no accident. So as you begin to measure it, you find out that it's laid out as a square. And it's a great length and width and so forth. And it's 1,500 miles each way. Now it's stated in different things of furlongs and so forth that's there. 12,000 furlongs. But 12,000 furlongs is 1,500 miles. How wide's this city? 1,500 miles. How high is it? 1,500 miles. How deep is it? 1,500 miles. Now as you look at this, that would be from Seattle to where? Anybody know a city that's 1,500 miles from here? Denver, something like that? What's that? Anchorage? Okay. From here to Anchorage. Take this city, lay it down from here to Anchorage, build a side of it, tip it up, the way they do those tip-ups. That's how high it is. That's how wide it is. Great, great, gigantic city that we've got here. And the walls thereof was 144 cubits around it. Now then we find how high those walls are. And they were 218 feet thick. Man, those walls are really something. The material of the wall was jasper. The city was pure gold, like clear glass. It's just unbelievable. Unimaginable. I'm not going to try to describe what those things mean. I don't know what they mean. I know that if Oliver brings me in a piece of jewelry that he's worked on and said, look here, Lowell. I look at it, it's all ground down and sparkling in every direction. I don't look and say, Oliver, what does that right there represent? What's this right here? I look at it and say, wow, isn't that something? I don't even count the number of cuts. Oliver, why are there 218 cuts on that? If you'd only done it 217 times, it wouldn't have been as pretty. Wonder why the 218? So Oliver and I get in a discussion for 3 days on 218. Think we missed the point? Yeah. So I look at, wow, what a city. That's what he's trying to describe to us. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each one of the gates was a single pearl. Ever seen a pearl that big? Here, each one of them there. Enormous strength. Enormous value that we've already been taught. Now, we learned that there's not going to be any night there. There's going to be daytime all the time. Then we learned that its gates are never closed. You always had to close the old ancient gates at night or when an army came. But all of the enemy is going to be destroyed. Sometimes we say, what would earth be like if there weren't any liars or thieves or troublemakers? You wouldn't have to have any locks on your doors. You could drive downtown Seattle and leave your engine running in your car. What would life be like if there wasn't anybody doing anything wrong? That's what we've got here. You don't have to protect. You don't have to worry about intruders in any way. Now then we're down to the interior within the city itself. What now is the interior going to be like? We're down to chapter 22. So far we've been talking about the exterior of that great city. Well, the interior, it says, there's no temple. The Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. So we say, well, where are we going to live? Where's the temple? Isn't any? God and Jesus is the temple that's there. There's no sun. Well, how are we going to have any light? For the glory of God. God will be its light. And the kings will bring their glory into it. David and Solomon and Hezekiah. You ever wondered what it would be like to live in a king's mansion and to live a king's life? You look at the rich and the famous, and you say, I just don't understand even how they think. They're going to be your friends up there. They're going to be people you associate with. All of these great kings of the earth. And only those names which are written in the Lamb's Book of Life will be there. What a great, wonderful city that's going to be. Let's close now by looking at this. If you go back and pick up your Bible and you start in the book of Genesis, you read about heaven and earth was created. Of course, then heaven and earth became contaminated. Man sinned. The curse came upon heaven and earth and starts deteriorating away. But the Bible closes with a new heaven and a new earth that is much greater. God created the sun back there. We're enjoying it today. But in the book of Revelation, at the end of time, at life after this, we won't need any sun. God will give us the light. Back there, you read the story about how paradise was lost. Adam and Eve was expelled out of the paradise. Here, paradise is restored. Back there, you read about Satan coming. Satan made his approach and came up to Eve. Here we read about Satan being destroyed. He's all gone. Back there, man flees from God. Man had to flee out of the Garden of Eden. Here, man will bask in the presence of God. I've often wondered what it would have been like had Adam and Eve not sinned. Had they not sinned, they would never died. They would never grown old. There would never been any stickers on blackberry bushes. There would never been any curse on the earth. Everything would have been perfect. What would that have been like? Can't imagine it. They would have had God to walk in the cool of the evening of the garden. I can't imagine what it'd be like. And we say, boy, isn't it too bad that we missed that? That part of history is over. And you and I will never know what that Garden of Eden was like. Yeah, we will. We'll know what it's like and a whole lot more. Because in that city over there, we'll be living with you. Back over there, the tree of life was denied. Man sinned. God expelled him from the garden and put a cherubim to guard it. Over here, the tree of life will be restored. It'll be restored. Have you ever wondered what it's like to eat from that tree of life? You're going to find out. You'll have an opportunity. The tree of life will be there, and you will eat from it, and you'll never die. The 21st chapter of the book of Revelation, telling us what our life, what the life of the faithful will be like after all the enemies of God have been restored, have been destroyed, and we've gone to live in that great city. What a wonderful, thrilling thing. We have one more chapter that tells us about that life that's over there. Should you be here tonight and you need to be restored in any way, would you respond while we stand and while we sing the first stanza of this song?